Hello. Thank you for tuning in this edition of the Ashkenaz Festival's 25th Anniversary Archive Series online. I'm Eric Stein, the Artistic Director of Ashkenaz. The last many weeks, I've spent trolling through our vast archive of video recordings from the previous quarter century of festivals. And in the course of this work, I've discovered many gems and oddities. And I think it's fair to say that the focus of today's discussion qualifies as both. I Just Want to Jewify, the Yiddish Revenge on Wagner, had its world premiere with two shows at the 1999 Ashkenaz Festival in the Studio Theater at Harbourfront Center. I'm thrilled to have with me today four of the artists who were part of that historic production, beginning with the show's originator, Michael Wex, two of the actors, Denise Williams and David Wall, and the director, Jenny Romaine. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Good to be here.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. So I think before we start talking about any of this, I think we should watch a little clip, and that'll get us in the mood. So let's run clip number 11, please. All right. Well, that kind of says it all right there. Michael, let's start with you. Tell us where the idea for this show began.
The idea, I've long had a commitment to living my own jokes. And I'd been doing one for a while at the time about a concert at the Peretz School, the Yiddish day school in Calgary, where I came from. This never really happened, but I was saying, the Calgary Peretz Schula's annual Music is Music event, highlights from Wagner's Ring Cycle in Yiddish, just to show how big we could be. And one day it struck me, why don't I actually do that? Especially since I knew there was a festival coming up, another installment of Ashkenaz, and I was looking for something to do. The only weird part of it was I was completely unfamiliar with any of Wagner's music, except for, the Wedding March and Ride of the Valkyries at the time. But I knew he was a giant anti-Semite, and I thought, yes, this is the perfect thing. Let's work on that. And the kind of mythology that he was dealing with was what I had actually done in graduate school. So I had, my major fields were Old English and Old Norse, Old Icelandic. So I kind of knew a lot of this stuff, and I knew Middle High German. So I figured I could mess around with this and just pretend that actually what had happened was that German culture had developed from Yiddish rather than the other way around, and try to set the record straight.
Did you have like an elevator pitch in your pocket to go and sell this show?
Yeah, I think it was something along the lines of people in Viking helmets singing in Yiddish, and that kind of did it. I did get an independent grant from the Laidlaw Foundation, so I must have thought it out well enough to be able to convince somebody to invest in it. But that was pretty much the elevator pitch.
Nice. And how did the rest of these fine folks get involved?
It started out, it was me and Heiko Lehmann, who's not here right now, but he lives in Germany. He's the tall German. If you watch the show, he and I had been doing other stuff, sort of a combination of storytelling and music, both in North America and in Germany. So I immediately first contacted him and said, let's see if we can get some songs for something like this. And then I needed singers. So I got hold of Dave, whom I knew from his work with the Flying Bulgars. Dave brought Denise in because we needed somebody, a classically trained singer who could do this stuff, who had some familiarity with Yiddish. And Denise had been singing, I think, with the folk choir here in Toronto. So she'd had some exposure to that. And she could actually, she had the chops to do the real music. And Jenny was like a gift, because when I went to David Bookbinder, who was the artistic director at the time, he told me, oh, Jenny's going to be the artist in residence at Ashkenaz. She's going to be here anyway. And this is like perfect, because that's who was going to be my first choice as director, which meant that Jenny being part of it didn't have to come out of the show's initial budget. She was getting budgeted for as artist in residence. So it worked out like perfectly in that way. And basically I got my first choice on everybody that was involved in the show. And of course we had Sasha Leminski, who had played both with the Flying Bulgars and later played in your band, Eric, if I recall. He was around and about and willing to do it, so it worked out really well.
That's great. Jenny, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you recall about how you got involved with this, and what your initial thoughts were when Michael told you about the show.
Well, I'm a huge Michael Wex fan, have been for a really long time, and seeing this video made me realize, like, whoa, it's a really long time. But I felt like just as a huge fan of the written work and the performing work, I felt like I already understood the brain that this material was coming out of, and the depth of knowledge and experience. And so the person making the jokes that to some might feel distasteful actually had the right to be making those jokes. And I learned, I'm always learning from the Rav there, the stand-up Rav, Herr Wexel. And so I was just delighted. And and, I wasn't familiar with Denise. I knew a little bit about David. I knew Heiko. I knew the people who designed the puppets. I had worked with them a lot. So I think that was part of it, is like we were all in the same world. There wasn't a lot of explaining to do, just staging.
Right. You said something interesting just before we got live here. You were talking about, you were struck that that this show was even produced at that time, that it was sort of an avant-garde piece of theater that nowhere else might have gotten produced other than at Ashkenaz.
Yeah, I guess the spirit of openness that I always encountered from that festival, bringing this kind of wild commitment to celebration and puppetry and, my queer aesthetics and kind of a folk tradition, which is irreverent in some ways, but also, a lot of us have worked in archives and studied the language. So there was like a really deep commitment to the culture, but a kind of rascal or street performers approach. And I felt like the high culture and the low culture were always held in that festival. And I really appreciated that visionary approach, because also it enabled me to be part of it. And, that voice is so essential to the culture, and it's very often excluded by people who want to be respectable. And I felt the festival was open to all kinds of noise and sound and music.
Well, I think you're being overly modest to say that you were permitted to be part of it. I think you actually were a huge influence in shaping it from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, the whole look and all the motion of the show comes down to Jenny. I mean, she turned it from something on a piece of paper into an actual theater piece which I don't think it would have been without her, and without also Shadowlands Theater, Brad Harley and Ann Barber, who made the incredible costumes. And they were old friends of Jenny. I'd first met them actually through Jenny, and they've been involved with Ashkenaz since day one. The puppets and everything that people are still parading with every year in Ashkenaz are the puppets that Brad and Ann made in 1995 for the first festival. But that kind of, again, it was this incredible synchronicity that we're able to get all these fabulous people who knew each other, in most cases, and hadn't always worked directly together, doing something where everybody was, like I say, kind of on the same page.
For sure.
Also, another thing about the form of the theater is that, like opera, it's singers theater, but it's also very visual, and it's not dependent on a lot. It's a Gesamtkunstwerk, right? So it's sculpture and dance and music and language all operating at the same time, which is also true of puppetry. So I think that was a really interesting and easy elision, that it's fine to work on all these levels simultaneously. Like, that makes sense for both forms.
Yeah, that sort of synchronicity throughout the festival was really, really palpable in those early days, and hopefully still is. But definitely in those first few festivals, Jenny, when you were so prominent in the development of the parade and in other theatrical productions there was a sort of cross-disciplinary connection between things that I think you were very much a part of. So it's great to be revisiting it. Let's get Dave and Denise involved here. Maybe let's watch another clip. How about let's run clip number 4. I'm speaking to our technical producer Pierre in the back here. Let's hear.
The Jew musician makes everything sound like himself, like a cantor.
Elvis Presley?
His home life verged on the kosher. And he was further corrupted by Lieber und Stoller. You ain't no but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't no but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't never killed a rabbit, you ain't no friend of mine. You see what I mean, my dear? Judaic works of music often produce on us the impression as though a poem of Goethe's was being rendered in the Jewish jargon.
You mean Yiddish?
Mein Ruf soll wehen, mein Herz ist dacke schwer. Mein Ruf soll wehen, mein Herz ist dacke schwer. Ich will singen, mehr, weiß mir mehr.
Dave, I've known you for about the time of when this show was done, and I think that was the role you were born to play, to be honest.
Was this show done in the last century?
It was indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I was watching this incredible video, I'm so glad it was captured, because part of me actually think it never happened. It's like this dreamscape from some distant place. But when I was watching it, it's so incredible and unique, this show. And maybe it could only happen in Ashkenaz, but I think it could only happen in a world associated with Michael Wex. Michael, I think that you and I think, are you being disingenuous? Like, you and I used to bond about Wagner. You said you didn't know any Wagner. Is this because people will be upset if you admit that you knew about Wagner? Because you and I, we were going to go see The Flying Dutchman, and you talked about Lohengrin, and
that was during and after this. What I had to do was start listening to a lot of Wagner, but in a hell of a hurry, which I did. But
it's a Stockholm syndrome, right? Because you ended up liking it. I know it. I know you ended up liking it.
That's when I knew the joke had gone too far.
Exactly.
When I started actually to enjoy it. I still remember while we were working on this, there was Metropolitan Opera Saturday afternoon broadcast that I, for some reason, had on, and the quiz that they have between acts on the radio to keep people amused happened to be about Wagner.
Yeah.
And I got every answer. 6 months earlier, I wouldn't have known a thing.
But
I mean,
I'm getting to the point. The point is that if you have someone like Denise singing the Liebestod from Tristan und Isolde, I'm lying on the ground and she's singing this incredible piece of music by Wagner, and it's Denise's incredible voice, you can't help but enjoy it. Even as a Jewish person in this kind of masochistic way, the point that we keep butting up against the fact that Wagner is one of the greatest artists and composers to ever live, even though he's a raging anti-Semite, horrible person. And I think that's one of the things maybe that's a subtext of this musical, is that, or opera, whatever we call it. I mean, to hear Denise sing that melody, it illustrates the point that it is great art. Am I wrong?
no, I don't think so. I mean, part of, I guess, what I was talking about in that is, here you have this guy who is like, you know, he's the icon of anti-Semitism, of racism in the Western world. I mean, he redefined it, or he helped to. And yet he's also, I'd say, arguably the single most influential artistic figure, certainly in recent Western history.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we can imagine Western high culture without his contribution.
And the music is so beautiful.
Better or worse.
And because, like, Denise's singing in this video is so incredible. Like, you just sound incredible, and a lot of it is the melodies of Wagner. So that's just, to me, it's a really interesting sort of ethical problem in the, you know, that you are discussing, Michael, in the writing of this, but it is at the core of the piece, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, something else about that strikes me is that at that period in the 90s, when the Yiddish and klezmer revival was really picking up steam, Germany had been such a central venue for the development of this movement. And I think there's a clip from the show that sort of references that. Clip number 5, Pierre. We can watch that.
Yiddish is the real voice of Germany. The pure, uncorrupted sound from pristine Teutonic civilization. Ushim Ashkenaz, the language of Germany, so defined by all Hebrew sources.
The Holy German Mother, before she was disgraced in Gentile mouths which not only corrupted the speech, but despised it, mouths which spat up the Jew, then presented the mother tongue as Yiddish, a dialect, a jargon, a dog German fit only for Jews. The tragedy is, they also persuaded the Jew, who began to abandon their real tongue. And now, Yiddish, the crucified Christ of language, Yiddish has been resurrected in the mouths of Jew and Gentile alike, if not in their homes, at least on their stages.
Only festivals of Yiddish can redeem the German people by leading them back to the roots of their language and culture.
That's so complicated.
Yeah, there's so many levels to that. It's
I
unbelievable.
still believe it. It's
Denise, tell us about your perspective getting involved in this show.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I guess as Michael put, as we all put it, I ticked off quite a few boxes. I ticked off some boxes. I understood a bit of the Yiddish culture through my work with the Toronto Jewish Folk Choir. I joined the choir just as a support singer, and as a classical singer, I sang many languages, and of course would want to do them with authenticity. So I would always understand exactly what singing and the background of the culture or whatever. So there I was in the Toronto Jewish Folk Choir, and meeting the likes of David Wall. Remember, we did some of those those shows, the Yiddish Land Cafe and things like that there.
Yeah.
I really began to not only, I guess I had an understanding of the type of songs, the laments, and various things through the African American experience. So I became a person that was a soulful singer of the Yiddish folk songs and various things like that. I was even asked to sing a dialogue relating the African American spirituals with some Yiddish songs in a dialogue to do with the interdialogues with the Showboat era. So all I could say is this didn't seem like anything. People were saying, well, what are you doing there? And this did not seem at the time like anything strange to me at all, because I was already, Toronto is a very multicultural city. And I'm sitting here presenting to you, yes, I'm a Black, I'm actually Caribbean, but I was in Toronto since I was 3 years old, let's say. And because of that, the Caribbean culture is just one of the cultures I had. And in the music culture, like I said, singing Yiddish wasn't such a big deal at all, or understanding it. Of course, I'm a classically trained singer. So, Michael, I am so grateful for your work and your work in using someone like myself who can sing opera. I love to sing opera. I sing art songs, and I love the art songs. And of course, the leader that you adjusted into the Yiddish leader. And also, I would say some of the real folk music of the Yiddish, and finally, some of the commercial music that we had in the show too. I had a real blast. The only thing I would say is that I really did have to do my studies, not so much with the Wagner and not with the Yiddish language, but some of the jokes, some of the stuff that was going on, and I had to go. And I say, Jenny, thank you so much for your amazing direction. And some of the questions I asked, so like, what is going on here and everything. But I did get a really great education. It was fun. Thank you for allowing us to play. David, you're an amazing scene partner. and it was just, all I could say is the play is what brought this together. And this was a magical team, starting with authenticity, starting with what was going on, I guess, culturally, and what was going on in the world, and intersections. So I'll say lastly that intersections is something that I strongly do. I find where are those cultural angles, and just sort of stick them together in ways that we think, ooh, we're not too sure how good this is. I'm going to use the word kosher or whatever to bring these cultures together, like Black and Jewish that I brought together for many, many, many years, from the days of Showboat into the current day of my Walk Together Children concert of Black, Jewish, and Muslim diasporas. So if I've said enough, that's where I'm at.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Let's hear a little clip of you singing from the show. Let's run number 7.
Once the language of the Jews, Yiddish has been forgotten as a relic of degradation. Suddenly, though, it's a good thing this language no one knows. When I really want to talk, I don't speak Yiddish. And don't expect me to apologize.
A Sprache von der Minne, wo sie will ich nicht kennen. Sein armes Geld ist verheutig von der Welt. A Sprache aus kenn
Beautiful.
Wow.
Maybe you know what? Let's run a little bit more of Denise. Let's check number 8. So just, and that's beautiful. Just so everybody's watching understands, we are going to be streaming the full performance later this week on Thursday, July 30th at 8 p.m. It'll go live on Facebook and YouTube. So this discussion is just a way of getting our appetites whetted for watching the entire show. Let's get back to some other oddities about the show. Now, when I discovered this footage, which was actually shot by my late brother David, I pulled up this footage and I found that there were 3 different camera angles from the show, and I was pretty excited to find that. And then as I started looking at the footage, it turned out there was 2 different actors playing the same role in the show. So, Michael, can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah, what had happened was while we're in the process of putting this together, but before we'd actually gone into rehearsal, Heiko, who lives in Berlin, we'd been expecting to be here for both performances, found out there was a family issue in Germany. He basically had to return to Germany on a particular date. I can't remember exactly the date, but he was only going to be able to be in Toronto for the first show. I think what it was his grandmother's 80th or 90th birthday party is what it was. So we had to find somebody because there were 2 shows scheduled. We needed to find someone who could step in and do the show, which normally finding an understudy is not that hard, but to do it knowing in advance that you're only going to be doing this once is really, people tend not to want to do that sort of thing. But once again, Dave knew somebody, and he got us to Dennis Fry, who was the shorter, non-blonde German guy in the show. And Dennis, whom I didn't know before that, was absolutely fantastic. And he clearly got it right away, and he got right into it. And of course, there was no alternation within a single performance. So, the one night was all Heiko, the other night was all Dennis. But of course, to come up with a better and clearer recording, the cuts made have both of them, but they're actually playing the same part.
Right. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch for when we stream the full show, if you watch it, and tune in for that. Let's check out. Well, there was something funny that you told me, Michael, about, I think it was the first show. And we referenced Sasha Leminski earlier, who was the pianist in the show. Yeah. And those who know Sasha know that he's a character unto himself. So, Michael, you want to tell us about a little mishap that occurred during the show?
Yeah, I hope he doesn't sue us. Sasha had, for whatever reason, brought his cell phone with him onto stage and put it on top of the piano, which I don't really care about, but he had forgotten to turn it off. And as he was playing the introduction, I think to Die Forelle, the Schubert piece, his phone started to ring, and his ringtone was Stars and Stripes Forever. So he's still playing.
People thought it was part of the show.
I think, and all
People
of a
thought it
sudden, and I'm standing there going, like, if he answers it, I'm going to kill him.
Well, I can tell you from my own experiences with Sasha that the phone was never far away from him. He used to strap it onto the top of his accordion so that he could keep on top of whatever was happening.
Not that he needs it, but Sasha did an amazing job because he's not a piano player. He's an accordionist, a classically trained, at the Moscow Conservatory accordionist, but he took on the gig and played. I mean, he's brilliant. You listen to him and he's playing. Those are hard pieces. That's not easy stuff. So
brilliant. I might even say, believe it or not, guys, I didn't hear that. Like, that's the opening to the song that I was singing. I don't know if it went out of my mind, really. But
You're probably concentrating.
You get in with these German art songs. You just got to make sure you get get in, and hopefully meet your pianist at the double bar line at the end,
As I was looking through this footage, I did find something very interesting that I think foreshadowed that moment. And I don't think anybody of you has seen this yet. So can we run number 13?
Here, Sasha, let me just give you these few notes. Okay.
Hold on.
I want this to be noted for the record that I'm trying to give him notes and he's talking on his cell phone. This is a late 20th century thing. Russian, Soviet immigrant talking on his cell phone. And we're trying to run a Yiddish festival here, and this post-Soviet guy is talking on his cell phone, and I can't.
Да, ты можешь забрать эту трубку.
It's not in my mind so much.
Хорошо.
It's the cell phone.
A classic moment. Amazing that piece of footage exists.
Also, Denny's acting is excellent. Her indignation,
Totally. It's an excellent
yeah.
There's a couple. We should wrap this up pretty soon. But there's a couple other little clips I'd like to show. Let's run number 3.
Bells, mein Städtele, Bells, mein Himmel, Furcht, meine kindische Jahre verbracht. Jeden Schandfleck, sitzen unter den grünen Bäumen, lehnen bei dem Wasser.
Perfectly natural. Perfectly natural. Makes perfect sense.
It is the role you were going to play. Absolutely.
It was his second time playing it, because I'd actually stolen that. Dave and I and Brad and Ann from Shadowlands Theater and a couple of other people had been hired a couple of years before this to do a Purim spiel, a Purim play for kids at the JCC here. And so I was supposed to write a Purim spiel. So we have let's have the king. Well, where's the king? So you got to have Achashverosh, who Dave played as Elvis. Actually, the pompadour
do
that show.
Can I quickly do a very, very short excerpt from that?
Please.
But I can't help falling in love with Jews.
There you go. The thing writes itself, right? Before we wrap up here, I want to play at least one clip. Michael, I mean, obviously your performance and your origination of this show is central to the entire thing. So I want to play a clip of some of your monologue here. Let's run number 10.
And it's as if being dead isn't already bad enough. You've got to spend all of eternity in hellishly hot conditions, baking bagels that, being dead, you have no need to eat. That being dead, you have nobody to whom you can sell them. That being dead, you don't even know anybody except for other dead people who are all busy baking their own lousy bagels that they can't get rid of it. This is the Jewish myth of Sisyphus. But Sisyphus is a toy. He pushes the rock rolls back. He pushes the rock rolls back. Sisyphus at least came out with muscle.
Oh, that's good.
It's a signature moment, I would say. So the last thing I want to run here, and before we run it, well, let's maybe come back to how we started, where we watched the opening number. Now, this signature musical number in the show. I wonder, Michael, was the title for this show inspired by the Parliament song?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah,
it came from that, right?
Yeah, stole it directly.
And the lyrics you came up with, I mean, they're absolutely brilliant. Can we get those lyrics up on screen? Can you all read those? I mean, there's some just incredible lines here. I love, I just want to Jewify, make the Goyim work for me. I just want to Jewify, circumcise all that I see. I mean, brilliant. Songwriters Hall of Fame stuff there.
Yeah, absolutely.
This would be, you would all do well to study this before you watch the full show later this week. So I want to thank you guys all for joining us. Really an incredible piece of work. And I guess, what happened afterwards? Did the show play anywhere else later?
No, never. I tried to sell it. Nobody was interested. A couple of people asked to see scripts, and they never spoke to me again. They didn't just not get back to me. They changed their email addresses to avoid me. And that was kind of it for that. Subsequently, Jenny and I have worked together on other projects. Most recently, a version of the Bovo book that we did with Alan Byrne for Yiddish Summer Weimar, 4 years ago now, I think, which was also a lot of fun. But no, this regrettably didn't go anywhere, and it's a very cheap show to put on.
I mean, that's what's
anybody's interested.
Yeah, I think in a way, the show was very much of its time in terms of that period in the Yiddish culture movement, but in a lot of ways ahead of its time in terms of stuff this avant-garde coming out of the scene and getting wide review. And I bet you actually there would be some places where this could play today.
Yeah.
If we ever get back to
if they ever reopen the theater.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. Dave, Denise, Jenny, Michael, it's a pleasure to talk with you and see your work in the show. I hope everybody will tune in this Thursday at 8 p.m. on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. That'll be on the Ashkenaz channels. Ashkenaz Festival is the handle in both cases. Before we go here, we're going to take one last look at the final number of the show, the big full cast review of I Just Want to Jewify. This will be clip number 12. Thank you.
I just want to Jewify, make the Goyim work for me. I just want to Jewify, circumcise all that I see. Magic is the master plan that can control every thought. This English come creeping upon you. just want to Jewify. Circumcised so that I see her.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody, tune in on Thursday at 8 p.m. Thank you again to our guests for joining us, and everybody stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Nice to see everybody.